What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today, Thursday, October 27th, 2022. I'm your host, Sean Murphy, and I am joined by my guy, Jeff Iafrady. It's so good to see you, my friend, because while you were gone, Jeff, oh my God, the sky is falling, Jeff.
That's what I've been told. Even though I'm watching the same games everyone else is, but I've been told trade everybody, fire Dwayne, and fire Troy. That's the solution.
Mm-hmm.
Through
Because
four
for,
games, by the way.
yeah, because for the second time in 4 games, the Pistons were blown out on the road, meaning they lost in double digits, this time to the Washington Wizards. And part of that game, Bradley Beal did not play. However, Kyle Kuzma, Monte Morris, Kristaps Porzingis
Some good
all looked
players.
more than serviceable, had really good games. But Jeff, it seems like the expectations for this team were simultaneously to be in the lottery to get Wembanyama while still being in the playoffs. And I'm trying to figure out how those meet and where those are melding because we're currently at 1-3. I think it's been pretty apparent we look as young as advertised in a lot of ways. But Jeff, what's your concern level right now about the team, about specific players? Let's start with in general. Where are you at concern level right now? Are you ringing the alarm? Are you calling the brigades?
I am not. And a lot of that has to do with, you're 4 games in the season. Now, if they're 0-13 or 1-15, we could start having conversations. But right now, I think it really just starts with the players. And we kind of talked before recording this about how I think more so the concern needs to be on certain players rather than the entire team because they're a young team. And I tweeted out today, comparing this team to the 2019-2020 Memphis Grizzlies team. And at the time, both very similar starts. And we always like to compare the Grizzlies to the Pistons until things go bad. Well, it wasn't always pretty for the Grizzlies either, but there's going to be hiccups along the road. There's going to be guys or players, the team's going to struggle. Defensively, I get it. If you want to point out things, what they're doing defensively, I personally need a bigger sample size, but no doubt they've been struggling. If you have the tweet, I want to pull it up just to
I have it right
side
here.
by side. It's just so interesting, actually, because I did the math, too, about the numbers. And here we go. Memphis Grizzlies in 2019-2020, it's crazy. Similar over-under, 27.5 over 29.5. They started the season 2-7. And this is the craziest thing.
In a super deep conference, by the way.
Yes, very true. Opponents scored 483 points through the first 4 games. It's the same exact number as the Pistons. The same exact number.
That's creepy.
And it is. And they finished the season 34-39. Now, do I think the Pistons can finish with 34 wins? I don't know. I had them slightly below that. But the point is, it's way too early to make judgments on the entire season through 4 games. This team, they've struggled to win a road win. Wow, that's surprising. A very young team. The only win they have so far is at home. So it's too early to react, Sean. I'm not concerned, but certain players, certainly. If you want to bring up Killian Hayes, yes, it's concerning for his career. But as a team, it's too early, man, to be freaking out. It really is.
Yep, 100%. Jeff, we are 0.0487% through the season.
I love
the
that.
Lions 4 games in, I can understand. That's a fourth of your year, right?
Right.
But for the Pistons, I want to put in perspective the fact that, yes, the Pistons are 1-3. However, Jeff, is it not also true that opening night was, as of recording, a week ago?
Correct. Very correct. And another thing,
a lot of people, like you said, that night, walking out of the LCA, what were they saying, Jeff?
I heard some playoffs in there.
You heard some playoffs in there. Yes, you did. We both did. We both laughed. And however, Jeff, I think like we said, we've seen both the the youth of this team and what that means for the good and what that means for the bad. You brought up that tweet about what you said. I want to bring up a tweet about Dwayne Casey from Dwayne Casey before the game today.
It's a great
always seems to say the right things, by the way.
Yeah.
But James Edwards asked him about, some of the reactions, how they're feeling. And he said, quote, "No one celebrates when you pour concrete. Everyone is cheering with pom poms when the building is finished. We're pouring concrete right now." And that's the reality, is that right now, this team is laying the foundation. They are going out and every
Mhm.
single thing that they're doing is setting the foundation for what they want to be going forward. Even the defensive problems. Like, I know everyone hates the switching, but you realize that they're not playing a switching scheme based on the team that they have right now, right? They're playing a switching scheme for the team that they're building. That's the vision.
Mhm.
You play the scheme that you want to ultimately build and play into.
Right.
And
Right.
even then, there's moments where when they're communicating well, when they're executing, we've seen the switching work at a decent rate, but at the same time, it's when the communication falters is when we've seen it go wrong. And
Mhm.
I think that's where the conversation shifts of it's way too early to be concerned about the team as a whole.
Yeah, and I wanna bring up your point too. You just said about defensively because it's something that I want to hammer on. Young players, especially when you have so many young players, especially a part of your rotation, you look at the things young players struggle with. It's not always offense. A lot of it is defense because offensively, players come into the league and you can practice offense all the time. But defense is something, and communicating specifically, like you brought up, is something that this team's going to have to learn to do. So the struggles they've had defensively really aren't surprising to me. I mean, they really aren't. If you expected this team to come out day one and be where they want to be immediately, it's just not going to happen. So you can continue, but I want to bring up defensively. That's the slowest part to transition for all these young guys. And honestly, people talk about defense, but can we at least point out Jaden Ivey's leading the team in steals? So you got some
Yeah.
guys making plays, but again, that team defense, that camaraderie, it's got to be built,
Well,
for longer than 4 games.
Well, and that's the other thing, Jeff, because when we talk about a lot of the criticism that's been thrown out there, it's the greatest hits. It's the Pistons Twitter greatest hits.
Right.
It's the rotations that's the problem. It's Dwayne Casey that's the problem. It's how slow and terrible this team is that's the problem. That we're not making any progress in our rebuild. That's the problem.
For
Which, by the way, the fact that we're saying that we're not making progress in our rebuild with the amount of talent that we have with Jalen Duren and Jaden
Yep.
Ivey and the way that they've played. If we
Bagley's
don't,
not here.
if we do want to overreact to anything, by the way, let's overreact to the fact that the NBA.com power rankings, their top 5 rookies currently have 2 Pistons in them.
No, Sean,
Jalen Duren and Jaden Ivey.
that doesn't
And
fit the
by the
narrative.
way, they're both there not just because of what they're doing on offense. Jalen Duren's primarily there
Yep.
because of rebounding and defense. Rookies don't get to the top 5 for their rebounding and defense. Jaden Ivey is there because of his amazing abilities on the offensive end.
Yeah.
But then in addition, he's shown he's not no slouch on defense yet. He's actually been pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been incredibly impressed. And the other thing, by the way, you want to talk about coaching? That's coaching. Your rookies being prepared opening night, ready to go, is coaching. Like, Jeff, like, how do people not understand that that's coaching, getting your players ready to go?
Yeah, and people love Sadiq Bey, the step he took from year 1 to year 2, but no one you see, it's where you want to point credit to. For me personally, and I love this, another quote, shout out to James Edwards, by the way, another Casey quote, "Let's cut to the chase. The second unit has not performed. We've got to get them going and have production." Again, 4 games. The sky isn't falling. It's 4 games with a young team. And the reason why I love that he said that is because we talked about this on the pod. Like, we brought it up. This team misses Burks and Bagley bad. And you see how bad their bench is without them. You have Corey Joseph, you have Kevin Knox playing significant minutes. Like, to make a judgment what this team can be when 2 guys that are going to be significant parts of your bench aren't here yet, I don't know. It's not the route I'd go personally, but Pistons fans are
It's not
frustrated.
saying that they would be winning all of their games if these
No,
guys were on their
no, but
second
they'd
unit,
certainly be better.
but it's the fact that you have 2 guys that combined have at least 28 to 30 points per
Mhm.
game over their career of offense.
And
That's
Bagley
the
brings size too. Brings
Yeah.
size, baby.
Yeah, 100%. And it brings the ability to have more than one big. Like the ability, like one big off of your bench. It gives you flexibility And, if say one of those guys does go down, you have someone there, right? Like if one of those guys goes out right now, we're toast. Like,
Toast.
we are absolute toast. I also think we're showing, like, how much we miss Jeremy Grant as well, by the way. Like, I don't think we saw how stable he was on the defensive end,
What did we
and I
talk
think
about?
how and it's like we talked about what it would look like to trade a guy like Jeremy Grant and, like, what you would get in return, and don't get me wrong, with Jalen Duren, it looks like the returns absolutely justified the means. But
Right.
at the same time, Jeff, Jalen Duren's salary is what? $1.6 million.
Crazy.
You know where the rest of that
Crazy.
salary that Jeremy Grant took up went? The Kemba Walker contract.
Hmm.
Kemba Walker, where's he at, Jeff? He's no longer on the Detroit Pistons. What does that mean? That's $20 million of well, he wasn't $20 million, but that's more dead money.
Yeah.
That's not another player that could come in and complement this team. That is an active decision
Mhm.
that Troy Weaver made going into this season. Now transitioning to being concerned about players. Let's just get the elephant in the room right off the bat. I will say the thing that made me laugh really hard on Twitter last night was seeing Kuka Heel take Killian Hayes believer out of his bio. Seeing the screen recording, the dramatization of that was incredible. But
It was funny.
the thing with Killian Hayes, we were talking about it last night, Kool-Aid and I, and just talking about we haven't seen that same guy in since the preseason. And
Right.
Dwayne Casey acknowledged, as such in the post game presser. He said he's not playing at the level he did in exhibition. We have to find out why. He's putting pressure on himself. He doesn't need to. This is time to grow. And I think that's the big thing is I think you can tell with Killian. He was aggressive night one. He really was. But it seems like the more these shots aren't falling for him, the more it's just detrimental to his confidence. And I think with him, we got to start having a delicate balance of what the next steps are. I saw people start to propose G League already. Again, I don't think 4 games is enough to propose G League. However, I do think that it's pretty alarming Killian's offensive stats specifically. And as good as he is defensively, you just can't keep him on the court for a significant time if he's just not producing at that level.
Mhm.
Because we're getting, as much as it's unfortunate, Jeff, if he keeps going at this production, which I don't know if he will. I mean, he does have that's just the thing. It's 4 games. He could totally come out against Atlanta tonight as a recording and kill it, right? However, if he keeps playing like this is regression.
Right.
This isn't stabilizing. This is getting worse, right?
No, yeah, it's getting to the point where he's a legitimate liability, and we brought this up too before the season. Like we can appreciate what Killian Hayes does, other than score the basketball, but at the end of the day, you got to be able to score it. I mean, he's shooting historically low, and I love that Dwayne brought up the pressure he's putting on himself because I talked about this today on the morning show. I feel like at the end of the day, Pistons fans probably don't need to be so concerned or frustrated with Killian because at the end of the day, he's deciding his own future. It's Pistons fans at this point are like, hey, if he plays well, maybe he has a future. If he doesn't, the decision's already made for you. So, I mean, from Troy's point of view, yeah, it's frustrating if you want to look back and say, yeah, we could have had Tyrese, but I hate that because then you need to bring up the hypothetical of would you get Cade? Would you
Yep.
get Jaden Ivey? So, I'm not going to go that far of looking back in the past, but yeah, it's frustrating. I mean, this is a guy that a lot of people thought would be your sixth, or dare I say, or seventh, or dare I say, sixth man off your
Right.
bench, and we just sat there and were like, hey, that's just not the case. Like Killian, I don't think will ever be that guy, but we thought he'd at least bring something offensively, and you've seen it in the preseason. But again, it's I think at the end of the day, Dwayne hit it right in the head. I think it's more so just the pressure he's putting on himself, and I love that he
Yeah.
said, hey, it's time to grow, even though in reality, it's like, hey, it's kind of a time ticking for you in your career here. But at the end of the day, don't put pressure on Killian. Let him go
I
out and
think
play. But he's getting to the point where he's a liability, Sean,
I,
and
I
it's not good.
I think despite some of Killian's good performances in the preseason, I think there were some signs that Killian was going to struggle a little bit. I mean, I think back to the one thing with Killian's jump shot, through practice footage, through the preseason, he talked about how he changed his jump shot, but the thing is that you look at his jump shot and it almost looked different every time.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like his form was slowly going back to his old form. Like you talk a lot about like it's hard to change your shot in one summer,
Right.
especially when you're not building off of a solid foundation.
Hmm.
And I think, with Killian in particular, it's we've talked again. It's never been about what he can do physically because if he had if Killian Hayes had the mentality of a Jimmy Butler, he could potentially be one of the best point guards in the NBA. Just based off of his skill set, his physicality, his athleticism,
Right.
everything that he has in his tool set, he has everything he needs, right?
Yeah.
And you and I both agree on that. It is all up here. And again, it's one of those things where part of like it is a skill set to have the mentality to be willing to take a shot again when you go back down court. That isn't just a asset, that is a skill set, right? Guys like like sometimes it's to a detriment if it's overly that way. Like Russell Westbrook sure seems to have that skill set, but
Right.
damn, he needs to not have that skill set, right? That's not a skill set for him. That's a detriment.
Yeah.
However, for guys like Killian to know, like, hey, that shot didn't fall down. I need to take another one. Right? Like that's the thing. When you take yourself mentally out of the equation on the offensive end, you're doing the defense's job for them.
You know what you're saying sounds a lot like a guy over in Brooklyn, Ben Simmons, and
Yeah,
different
that's
players, but
exactly it, man.
but it's obviously different size players. He's man's the size of a center, but with Ben, you saw it after that playoff series against Atlanta. Like mentally, Ben just isn't the same, and you see it in some of these Brooklyn games. Now, not trying to change the subject, but it's like his timidness. He's a liability. Like, yeah, Ben, you could bring all these other tools, like being a good defender or his playmaking abilities, rebounding ability. But at the end of the day, Killian's got to be able to score at an NBA level. Like that's the reality. And I get the jump shot changing, and I don't want to write off his season through 4 games. I think he can still turn it
Of
around,
course.
but it's ugly. Like it's getting to the point where if he keeps this up and plays this bad, and you have Burks coming back and Bagley coming back, like Killian, and I love that this roster has so much young talent because there's more competition. But Killian, to me, like it's inexcusable how he's playing. Like
I
there's
think
nothing to defend that.
I
Zero.
think and it's not even like I don't think it's like I don't know if I'd use the word inexcusable. I think for me it's more so it's just concerning that it's getting worse as games are going on. I think that's the thing that's been bothersome, and in particular, I think it's particularly troublesome coming off of by far his worst game of his professional career. I mean,
Yeah.
no assists, 6 turnovers, no points,
That's
didn't make a single
inexcusable.
it was the perfect imperfect game, right? And so as much as, we can still believe in a guy's abilities and like what he can do on the court, or like what he can, like what he can potentially do going forward, it's impossible to not, look at the red flags that are right in front of you, right?
Right.
But again, the thing about it is, Detroit still has a lot of positives. I mean, we didn't even talk about, Cade Cunningham in this, and I don't even have any reactions to how Cade's played other than, being impressed with a lot of what he's done. I think with him, he's shown the ability to get going whenever he so pleases and chooses. I think for him, it's just about knowing to set the tone early in the game
Right.
as well, because a lot of times Cade will try to get guys going early, and that's great, and that's a great mentality to have as a star, right?
Mhm.
But at the same time, when you're sometimes you need to understand when you're such a playmaker and trying to make plays for others, that a lot of the times the best play is still going to end up being you making the play because you're that guy.
Yeah, and we talked about that as well, the fit with Cade and Jay Ivey, and that's going to take time. Now, they're both Jay Ivey's playing great individually, but those two together, like there's certain points where I think there's still confusion on kind of what their roles really are in
Right.
terms of when's Jay Ivey's turn or when it's Cade's turn. That's something that's going to be developed. It's going to take longer than 4 games, I'll tell you that. So
Well, yeah, and,
not
and the
not
and
even
the difficult thing is that there's no set equation to this, right? There's no
right.
definitive answer because for each backcourt for each team, it's different. Sometimes the answer is to switch on and off between who's handling the ball. Sometimes the answer is to have both of them running the offense. Sometimes the answer is to stagger their minutes. Sometimes the answer is to never not have them on the court together, right? Like that's the thing about these two
Yeah.
backcourts. Like that's the delicate balance, right? It's is how do you figure out like, the best thing to fit? And like ultimately, I think for the first few games, I think they've still looked pretty good together, like all things considered. And the benefit of Cade playing off ball more, I think has been shown. I also think it'll just be more apparent when Cade starts knocking down more of those
That's
shots
it.
too.
Yeah, that's it right there. It's the ability to play off ball. He can do it, but efficiency wise, he hasn't been doing it. But again, I'm not worried about it. I'll say that through 4 games, I'm not concerned. They'll be just fine. That's kind of the figuring out process of any young team. So they got plenty
Right.
of time. So
Well,
people with
and
that,
even then, like if Cade's if we're talking about like Cade and we're saying that his slow start is 18 and a half points a game, 6 assists, 4 rebound. Like
right,
that's still pretty freaking good, right?
right,
That
it's
just
like
talks about
30
how
points
high
than
of
what we predicted.
the difference is the bar's higher now. That's the difference
Yep,
because now we're looking at Cade and we're not saying, hey, he's damn good for a rookie. We're talking about Cade being an all-star this year. That's like the
right.
type of jump we're expecting, right? So like, of course the expectation is going to be higher. So I don't blame fans for wanting to see more from him. Of course, it's just 4 games in.
Yeah. The only thing that really stood out to me is, again, it's 4 games, so it's even hard to even make this.
You can still point out what you
Yeah,
see.
the only thing that I've been really noticing for Cade is he's through 4 games compared to his, the whole season he played last year. This is a 3-point shot. I mean, the percentage hasn't gotten better; it's still 31%. So I'm hoping, and I'm kind of keying in on that moving forward for Cade, because like you said earlier, he's going to be playing a lot more off ball than he did last year. So
Do you think his
opportunities are
arc's
going to
too
be
low?
there. What'd you say?
Do you think the arc on his release is too low?
Yeah, that's something I noticed right away. I mean, you look at back even at Oklahoma State or in summer league last year, it looks different. Again, I'm not going to say it was worse or better. I don't want. None of us are shooting coaches, so I think people
Of
on Twitter
course,
that are
of
like,
course.
so people on Twitter that are like,
Listen,
John Beeline this or Ashton this, whatever it is. It's like, guys, come on. I mean, he's struggling, yes, but to say they ruined his jumper, I wouldn't go that far.
the
I
jump
wouldn't.
shot's a long process, man. You're not
Yeah,
gonna get like a lot of guys coming into the league, and that was always the thing Cade needed to work on. And statistically, right now, is he a great jump shooter? No, but he has the potential to be, and with
right.
everything else that he can do in his arsenal, and the fact that he might not be great from beyond the arc, but he's pretty damn good in the mid range.
Hmm.
He's pretty damn good in the paint. I think for him, it's about, if that shot's not falling yet, I think it's also about how do you play more within yourself? How do you go and find those looks that you need to get? And I think that's the thing with like learning how to play with Ivy is like learning how to get to your spots in the mid range with that type of guy alongside you, right?
Right.
I think it might be harder to work and operate in the middle of in the middle of the interior or in the mid range when you have a guy who's so hell bent on getting to the basket every play. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Forces you out a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Forces you to play a little bit more on the perimeter. So
Right.
I think for Cade, especially with a guy who's so good in the mid range, I mean it's a delicate balance you got to play. But again, nothing that can't be figured out. This is exactly it, though. This is the concrete that we're talking about. So getting better on the defensive end, whether it's through the communication, but also through individual players, whether it's through the returning of guys over the course of the next few weeks, guys like Nerlens Noel, who, by the way, according to Amari Sankofa, interview with Dwayne Casey, still hasn't even made a full practice yet. So everyone's saying he's got to start. There you go. But in addition, when Marvin Bagley and Alec Burks in the next few weeks are back as well, that bench is deeper. There's more veterans on this team that are good basketball players. I think it's gonna bring them to a different level, and at the very least, they're gonna look more competitive like we thought they would be. Do you think do you think that's
Yep.
not true?
I'm with you. You're speaking for me, Sean. I love it.
So, with that, what do you think? Let us know in the comment section down below. Where is your concern level at, and what do you want to see the Pistons get better at right away? Also, knowing that this is going to be super great coming off of Jaden Ivey not playing in the game tonight. Super looking forward to these comments. But anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. We will catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure you subscribe.